Police Chief William Kushner of the Des Plaines Police Department, who was my teacher, and more importantly to me, he was a mentor to me in the Chicago Police Academy in December of 1987, so probably before any of you were born, more than likely, right? Yeah, we're going back. Along with Detective Clemens, they are both positive role models, no matter what the adversity, and I think that's why I gravitated toward them so much. Along with a style of lecture that you've already heard a little bit of, not only based in case law, but a common sense approach to policing as well, based on a practical experience through war stories, a lot of war stories, and always interlaced with a sarcasm you may find familiar type of humor, which is based in sarcasm, which I think is a good learning tool. I think. Perhaps at this stage, you know, he could shed some light on some of the police issues that we were just talking about: responsibility, respect, ethics, and things like that. So, without further ado, here's Chief Kushner.
Thank you, Ben.
You're welcome.
Wow. Well, I can tell I'm not at a city council meeting because everybody's happy to see me. How many in here are thinking about law enforcement seriously as a career? Okay. How many of you indulge in recreational chemicals?
What?
Huh? Drugs. I realize marijuana is going to be legal the first of the year, and that poses all kinds of issues. If you heard us speaking just before Ben introduced me, I mentioned that we're having trouble getting recruits. And it's not just Des Plaines. Let me backtrack a little bit. I spent 29 years and 27 days with the Chicago Police Department. I came in January of 1977, okay? Way before any of you were born. If you're doing the math, it's 42 years racing toward 43 in law enforcement. I left Chicago as a lieutenant. I had worked TAC, gangs, taught at the academy twice, patrol, investigations as a homicide detective, ran asset forfeiture, money laundering, and criminal enterprise investigations with narcotics, was a community policing lieutenant, which is probably the most bizarre job anybody could have ever given me. And when I retired to go next door to Berwyn. I was the chief in Berwyn for 4 years, okay? And that was really an eye-opening experience because there's a lot of difference between Chicago and the suburbs. Procedurally, operationally, culturally, a lot of differences. I was in Berwyn 4 years. I left Berwyn. The politics changed, the mayor changed, the police chief changed. I was home writing a book. I was writing a book with a friend of mine from high school on victimology, from the victim's perspective. He had been the victim of a home invasion burglary. And we're writing the book about his and his wife's reflections on being a victim. And I got a phone call from the executive director of the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police. And he says, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm sitting on the deck with the laptop, a cup of coffee, the dog's at my feet, the sun is shining. Why? Lakemore wants you." The hell is a Lakemore? He said, "No, it's a where." I said, "Where the hell is a Lakemore?" He goes, "It's 14 miles southeast of Antioch." So you could spit into Wisconsin from this place. I lived in Beverly. I lived 9500 South on Western Avenue. So I meet the village manager, and we have a nice conversation. He said, "Would you take the job?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll take it temporarily." "No, I want you to take it permanently." I said, "I haven't even seen the town. The village board hasn't met me. I want you to take this job." I was supposed to be there 6 months. I was there 22 months. I came back from vacation. I get a phone call. "Are you happy?" "Why?" "I'm doing a search for a chief. I want you to come with me." I thought this was a consulting gig. Long story short, 7 years later, I'm still the chief of police in Des Plaines. We're 56,000 residents. Our daytime population swells to over 150,000. We're crisscrossed by major interstate expressways, rail lines, and we're adjacent to O'Hara Field. No chance of us being a terrorism target, right? We got a lot of issues. We're authorized 100 officers. We're currently at 99. We have 7 in the academy and 1 in field training. I've got 2 canines, one works days, one works afternoons. They're general purpose dogs. I've got a full detective division, I've got a tactical unit, and I've got a SWAT team. I've got 4 officers detailed to federal task forces. So we're very, very diverse. We're literally a mini Chicago. But the most amazing thing is this is the 3rd department at where I've been where I've had a free hand to make changes the way I see fit without undue influence from anybody else. So we talk about issues in law enforcement today. The biggest one right now is recruiting. It's recruiting. If your intent is to become a police officer, I don't care if it's Cicero, Berwyn, Chicago, Des Plaines, Dixmoor, Phoenix, wherever, you got to think about your choices right now. Okay? Yeah, marijuana is legal, going to be legal. Recreational marijuana, not a problem. Except they haven't cleaned up this little messy section of the federal law that says if you're using an illegal substance, and marijuana will still be unlawful under federal law, you can possess a firearm. Well, how the hell are you going to be a cop without a gun? London? Hampshire, England, maybe? They're arming the police in London, England, by the way. Okay? So that's something you have to think about. What's more important to you, a $25 lid of grass or a $78,000 a year job to start? Okay? That's something you got to think about. That's a choice you have to make. Okay? When I took the Chicago police test in 1975, we had 35,000 people take the test. 35,000. They gave it at 6 public high schools simultaneously. That's a whole lot of people. Okay? And out of that, they hired about 1,800. Every time they test, there's fewer and fewer people who apply and take the test. We had a huge recruiting class in March. We had 272 people take the test. But that was our 3rd test in 18 months because we lose people on the background investigations. Okay? If you have a prescription for an ADD or ADHD medication, okay, what you're prescribed is actually a methamphetamine derivative. So if you let one of your friends take one of your pills to cram to get through finals, not only have you broken the federal law, so has your friend. And that comes out when we do the backgrounds. Have you ever taken a prescription medication not prescribed for you? And if you say no, and you really did, it's going to come out on the polygraph, because we do a polygraph exam. Okay? I'm not proud of the fact that I had to fire 2 people. But I did. Fired a young man who lied on his background that he never had any psychological disorders until it manifested itself during a training exercise. Okay. We would call a car in off the street. Every shift does training their own way. Afternoon shift would call one car at a time over to Public Works, the darkest, most dimly lit part of the town, take their live weapon, give them a simunitions gun. It fires a 9mm caliber paintball, so we know it's an inert weapon. And here's the scenario. You stop a car, it's a suspicious vehicle. Every traffic stop is driven by the driver of the car you're stopping. They choose where to stop. They choose what their actions are. They know what they have in their car. You don't. Stops the car. The officer gets out of the car, steps out from behind the door. The driver of the car turns around and thinks, I'm not going to shoot him because he doesn't have protective gear on. I don't want his uniform to get full of paint. So he fires a shot at his feet. They stop play. We recorded the incident. We recorded all the training. We get back to the station. We put this kid back out on the street. We get back to the station to critique it, and he is pale. Pale. He says, I don't feel so well. Okay, well, why don't you call it a night and go home? I don't think I can drive myself home. So we have an officer drive him home. 2 days later, he comes back from his days off. He's got tinnitus, he's got ringing in his ears, he's got stiffness in his neck, he's got tunnel vision. Off and on, he's got to come off the road for 2 hours at a time to relax, to regroup. We send him for a physical, fitness for duty. Doctor calls me 20 minutes after the guy gets there. Because there's nothing physical wrong with this kid, send him to a shrink. So we sent him for a fitness for duty psychological. He neglected to tell us that he had been treated for anxiety since he was 14 years old. Okay? 14 years old. He wanted to get through this all. He wanted to make a career, even though he was going to freeze up anytime somebody yelled at him or pointed anything at him. You can't afford to freeze. We ended up firing him. Another young lady had, let's see, what's the best way to put it, the most politically correct way? She was morally challenged. Okay? She was morally challenged. She would have been at home in the 60s instead of in the 2000s. And she embarrassed the entire police department at a golf outing by exposing herself to other golfers on the golf course, jumping into a swimming pool in her underwear, making passes at both male and female officers, and being sexually aggressive. We ended up firing her. Okay? Your conduct, when people realize that you represent a police agency, your conduct reflects on that entire agency. So the conduct of one individual can reflect on 13,000 people, 100 people, or 12 people, depending on the size of your agency. So you need to think about that. If you don't have a handle on your hormones, your mentality, your behavior, you got to wait till you do, okay? Mental health is a big, big issue in law enforcement right now, and it should have been. I was a detective from 1980 to 1980, actually 1988 when I made sergeant. And one of the things that we would handle would be, we would get the call on the radio, make the investigation, right? You never knew what you were getting. If you're getting sent to a hospital, it could be a man shot, it could be a rape, it could be a child abuse. You don't know what you're getting. You make the investigation, 11014 Harding, you walk in, it's a copper's house. He's sitting at the kitchen table, head back, brains on the wall. Okay? 1980, what's the first thing the mobile crime lab does? They come out to process the scene, they take out a gun cleaning kit and put it on the table in front of him, make it look like he's been cleaning his gun. What did we do? What did we do?
What did you guys do? Or
What did we do?
You guys contaminated the crime scene?
Well, if it's a suicide, it's really not a crime scene. You contaminated the scene, but you also muddied the waters enough to let the family, give the family some idea that maybe it was an accident, maybe it really wasn't a suicide. Because suicide is that dirty little word in society, and it has been in law enforcement for a long, long time. Okay? From 1977 to 1988, there were 159 law enforcement suicides in the Chicago Police Department. 159 in one department. Okay? It's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. And for years, I don't care if you worked in Area 4 on the west side, if you worked in Area 2 on the south side, you worked in Area 6 up in Hollywood on the northwest side, everybody had the same thing. The same gun cleaning kit came out, and went all the photographs, and that was it. Because we thought we were giving the family some peace. In reality, did the family know that their loved one was having a problem? Probably. Probably. They start drinking, they start giving, what are the indicators of suicide? Anybody have any idea? A suicidal intent? You start giving away valuable things. You start saying goodbye to people. You start saying it won't matter if I'm not around. Okay? You know Steve Bikina. Steve Bikina is the sergeant that killed himself Labor Day of 2018. Steve Bikina and his wife were my recruits. They were 2 weeks apart in the academy. Steve worked with me in the 22nd District Gang Team. When I made lieutenant and went to Grand Crossing, which was not a real desirable assignment, I had the TAC unit. Steve and his partner voluntarily transferred into Grand Crossing to work with us. Steve was a hell of a good policeman. He had his idiosyncrasies, but he was a hell of a good policeman. Steve made sergeant. His wife went to narcotics. His wife started hanging around with a much younger policeman, told Steve, I want a divorce. Steve had 2 sons in college. One was just drafted by Oakland, play baseball. Excuse me. And Steve didn't know what to do. She wanted to file for divorce. She moved out of the house, left him with the house. He was afraid he was going to lose the house. He was going to lose his pension. He was going to lose his car. He was going to lose everything. So a group of us that worked together all got together and we said, Steve, we got you covered. We got an attorney who's a retired copper. We got a financial planner who's a retired copper. You're gonna be fine. You're gonna come out, you're gonna have 2 years, you're gonna be eating peanut butter. After that, you're gonna be back on stake. You're gonna be okay. And Steve didn't believe us. Because he had been with Lori since high school. So it was not only the fact that he was afraid of losing everything, he had already lost the love of his life and couldn't see going on without her. So he went to work. Labor Day of 2018, we had a big protest up on the north side. Steve was a sergeant, volunteered to work overtime, went up to work, went back in, did afternoon roll call, said goodbye to everybody. All right, listen, see ya, thanks, it's been a pleasure. That's usually not how you walk out of your roll call. Walked out of his roll call, got in his squad, drove over to Des Plaines in Harrison, I believe, took his vest off and shot himself in the heart. When coppers shoot themselves in the chest, it's because they want the family to have a good-looking body in the casket. Okay? Women don't shoot themselves in the head. They usually shoot themselves in the chest, or they take pills. There's still that modicum of vanity.
But did he work in mass transit?
Yeah, he was in the transit.
I knew him.
Yeah. So, I'm on the executive board of a group called Badge of Life. Badge of Life is devoted to reducing law enforcement suicides through training and education. So we approach Chicago. One of my advantages is that pretty much the entire command staff of the Chicago Police Department have been my recruits. So I'm very fortunate I can make a phone call and get an appointment with the superintendent. We went in, we sat down, we said, here's what we got, here's Dr. Friedman, our executive director, a psychologist. This is what we want to do. We want to do training for you, we want to train the trainer. We'll train 80 people as trainers. Each trainer will train 80 people in suicide recognition, symptoms of suicide. And it took almost a year to get this in place. And in that year, 7 more Chicago police officers killed themselves. Preventable? I can go back to 1977, I can tell you a real horror story. Actually, it was 1979. No, I'm sorry, 82. Young lady came on the job with me. Absolutely wonderful young lady. She went to work at Humboldt Park. She was in 13th. She was the first female in the 13th district. A lot of derision toward females on the job at that time. She gets a graze wound in a gun battle with some gang members and doesn't report it to the department, doesn't report the injury because she doesn't want to look like a pussy, pardon my French. Okay? So in the meantime, she's carrying on an affair with her former FTO, or field training officer, whose wife starts calling her, harassing her at all hours of the day and night. She decides the best course of action is to break off the relationship and transfer out of the district. So she does. She transfers to the 9th district, the 35th and Lowell. At the time, the Daley family, you know, the Regal family of Chicago, Richard J. Daley, King Richard I, his wife was still alive and living in the bungalow on Low Street. They had a car parked in front of her house and a car parked in the alley, 24/7, 365. The captain they put her on midnights, the captain puts her in the alley 2 nights in a row. She comes in, they put her on the car a 3rd night. She tells the captain, please, put me anywhere else in the district, don't put me in that alley again. And the captain's fateful words that were later immortalized in her suicide note was, honey, if you can't handle this job, you might as well just go home and kill yourself. And that's exactly what she did. That's exactly what she did. The captain retired that morning. Okay? So this has been an ongoing problem for a long time. So now CPD's got 80 trainers trained up. What they're doing with their training, I don't know. But if you look at mental wellness in a department, how many have ever heard of peer support? Okay. Peer support is a concept where in a department you train a group of people up to basically be people that other officers can talk to about their problems. And they have to be aware of what they can handle and what they can't handle, what they should be able to refer to an outside source. So when I first got to Des Plaines, my social worker, and that's a big difference between Southside departments and Northside departments, we have an embedded social worker in our department. She said, boss, what do you think about peer support? I said, I love it. So we let the officers pick their peer support team members. We let them vote on it. and we got 12 really, really solid people. After a little while, she goes, you know, we both know a lot of therapists. What do you say we put together a mental wellness program and we have these vetted therapists and we may have them available? She says, I said, yeah, that's a great idea. Well, then we took it a step farther, 2 steps farther. Can you log in the internet?
Yeah,
Okay. WeNeverWalkAlone.org, all one word.
okay.
So we took it a step farther. Well, we should regionalize peer support because there's a lot of departments where if there are 40 people or 20 people, there's a beauty shop mentality. I don't want to tell Ben because Ben's going to tell Joe, Joe's going to tell Sue, Sue's going to tell the chief, and I'm going to be in deep shit. That's not the way it works, okay? So we thought, well, we'll use our major case assistance team call-out framework. We'll send a list of peers that are available on a weekly basis. We'll have, somebody needs a peer, they can call that. And no, that's going to be way too cumbersome. We ran into an IT guy who believed that it's karma. As his sister attempted suicide in India like 8 years ago, she had nobody to talk to, she was unsuccessful. This is his way of paying the universe back by developing this website. So now we have interactive peer support where you can log on. If you do it from your phone, your department's a member of this network. You can click and talk directly to a peer support member 24/7, 365. Des Plaines took it a step farther. How many cops are there in the US? You guys have been way too quiet. How many police officers in the US?
They say 100,000,
Keep going.
300,000.
Millions? No, you're too high.
350,000?
You're short.
300,000?
You're way short.
Something like 250.
Yeah, you're still way short. There's about 785,000 police officers nationwide in the United States. What percentage have a substance abuse problem at any given time?
40.
You're high.
25.
25 to 30. Okay? That's a whole lot of people.
Moreno.
Okay? Now, where do they go for treatment?
Nowhere.
A lot of them don't. And the reason is, and I experienced this with some of the guys that worked with me when I was in Grand Crossing back in, it's got to be 95, as a patrol sergeant. One of the guys got caught up in random drug. And he came up hot for marijuana. And the department at the time said, you got to go into treatment. So you go into 30-day inpatient treatment, you pick the hospital, you go, you don't come out until you're done. You come out before you're done, we're going to suspend you pending separation. In other words, we're going to suspend you until we fire you. He was there 2 days, and he walked into my office, and I said, Stanley, what on God's green earth are you doing here? He said, I signed myself out. You signed yourself out? Why'd you sign yourself out? You're going to lose the job. Boss, you might as well fire me. I can't sit in group across from the guy that I locked up for delivery of heroin and say, talk about my family. I can't do it because they know I'm a cop. So that's one. Certainly time changed from 94 to 2012, right? 2012, I'm in Lakemore, bucolic little Lakemore, up in the middle of nowhere, and I've got a copper's wife come in to see me, which is never a good thing. And she says, would you please come to my house on Saturday? We're having an intervention for my husband. Okay. Now, by way of background, her husband had been fired from Lyons Police. You gotta really be bad to be fired from Lyons Police. He was selling leads information to a private investigator. Okay? Got caught and got fired. State police dropped the ball. He should have never been able to be a cop anywhere else. He was a nice enough guy. He was an affable guy. You tell him, why don't you go out and run radar, write a couple tickets. He'd go out, run radar, write a couple tickets, right? Never a complaint, never an overachiever. Except that every morning I would hear, after we did roll call, I would see him drive to the dumpster and I would hear bottles falling out of his duty bag. We call that a tip and a clue, okay? She says, we're doing an intervention. Tom's a raging alcoholic. Tom's a functional alcoholic. So we do the intervention. He's got a 7-year-old son. Can't get to it?
No, they keep giving me promos and crap.
Okay. So we have this intervention, and I said, Tom, you're going into Rosecrans and Rockford today, or I'm going to fire you tomorrow. You need to go in, you need to dry out. You got a 7-year-old son, you've got a job, you've got a pension, you've got a, you know, this is what you make it, okay? You got to do this. I'll go to outpatient. No, your family and your doctor think you need to go to inpatient, you're going. He goes to inpatient. I said, same deal. If you come out before 14 days, I'm going to fire you. 2 days later, he shows up for work. What the hell are you doing? He goes, boss, I'm sitting across group from the guy I locked up for drug-induced homicide. And they want me to talk about my family issues. Okay, I get it. We'll find you another treatment center. Forget it. You might as well just fire me. Before I could start the process, I was hired in Des Plaines. It's a recurring problem. Well, I think we solved the problem. We went to Holy Family Hospital in Des Plaines because Vicky's about this big and about this big around, and she is just a driving force. And she came in and she said, Chief, what do you think about going and talking to the president of the hospital, who said, if you ever need anything, come talk to me, about starting a law enforcement officer only substance abuse treatment unit? Sure, why not? It can't hurt. Go in, I said, Yolanda, I'd like to have a meeting. Would you host a meeting for some of my friends? And she said, sure, how many? I said, 50. She kind of looked at me and I said, seriously, 50. Okay. So she hosts a meeting. We have, I think there were 48 chiefs, deputy chiefs, and special agents in charge that showed up, state, local, fed, county. And she walked in the room and she's like, Bill, what do I have to do? I said, just say yes. And she kind of giggled and sat down. And I started my spiel about the need for a substance abuse treatment unit. And she got a funny look on her face and said, I'll be right back. And I looked at Vicki, I said, what did I say wrong? Because sometimes I'm not the most politically correct guy in the world. She goes, no, you were great. I don't understand what the issue is. She comes back 5 minutes later, she says, I told my staff I went this, and this, and I gave them a 2-week window. Well, 2.5 years later, and $3 million later, they opened St. Michael's House at Holy Family Hospital. It's a 14-bed inpatient substance abuse treatment unit for cops. It is the only one of its kind in the country. And it's had 12 patients daily since July 22nd when they cut the ribbon. So that's where we're going with law enforcement with mental wellness. If any of you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them if I can. Wow.
You forgot your homework. Told you that. Think of some questions.
Oh, you were serious about that?
Huh?
You were serious about that?
Yeah.
Wow, nobody's got any questions? Yes,
How long
sure.
is the treatment facility for?
Inpatient detoxification is 14 days. Excuse me, however, the medical director can't shorten that if you're making really good progress. And then the outpatient treatment is basically a plan custom tailored for the individual officer, okay? I had one of my sergeants who I seemed like a really straightforward guy. My tax sergeant called me and he says, I'm going into St. Michael's House. And I said, okay. He said, I don't want to disappoint you. I go, I'm not disappointed. I'm thrilled to death you're seeking treatment. He was there 3 days. They said he doesn't need to be detoxed. He just needs to go to the outpatient meetings. Fabulous. That's fabulous. Okay? I'll tell you how committed they are. I had the former superintendent of Chicago, Phil Klein, called me back in a year ago. And he said, hey, do you remember Captain so-and-so? And I went, yeah. He said, she's drinking again. She's taking drugs. She needs to get into St. Michael's House. I said, Phil, St. Michael's House is a vacant floor right now. She needs to get into treatment. I said, I'll get her into treatment. She's worried about her firearms owner's ID card. Okay, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. We'll make it work. The medical director of the hospital admitted her himself. They admitted her occupationally anonymous. So there's no indication she was a police officer, no indication she had a FOID card, nothing. And about 4 days into her detox, they found out that her Medicare gap insurance wouldn't cover a 14-day inpatient detox. The hospital ate the cost. You don't hear hospitals voluntarily picking up bills too often, okay? Even though they're not for profits, they're for profit, okay? So they ate the 14-day detox, and they've done this for a couple of people, which is absolutely incredible in this day and age. So, and then there's supportive care and ongoing care and support groups and whatnot after the fact. What else? No questions about getting into law enforcement, no questions about the jobs you really like, no question about the differences between city and suburbs. Yes, sir.
What are like some routine questions that they ask for the polygraph?
Have you ever been arrested? Have you ever participated in an undetected crime? Have you ever taken drugs, non-prescription medication, or unlawful drugs? They'll ask, most departments have you fill out a PHQ, a personal history questionnaire, and if there's something glaring on the PHQ, they'll ask you a question relative to that to see if you're lying. Have you ever received, did you receive any traffic citations that you didn't report? Can you get to it?
No, I think the security settings are too high or something.
Oh, okay. Well, basically what it is, what we're trying to get to,
Google it on your phones. Neverwalkalone.org.
.org. If you get to it, there's a, the first thing that'll come up will be 3 police officers standing by a thin blue line flag. There'll be a log-on block that you're not going to be able to log on to, but then everything shows 3 buttons: peer support officers, mental health professionals, and external resources. Below that are 5 numbers that never change: 4 suicide prevention hotlines and St. Michael's House number. If you get into when you get into this, eventually the officers get into, they can have a list of peer
You
support
got the
officers.
same thing that you got. Yeah, me too. It's like saying it's not a.
Oh, you know what? Because they're on the Wi-Fi for the school. That's
Yeah.
why. So.
Yeah, because I got that from
Okay.
went your own website.
So, those are the questions. If there's something, you know, now, I'll tell you from my time with Chicago, what the guys in personnel told us, it's easier for Chicago to disqualify somebody for a bad driving record than it is for misdemeanor convictions. So if you're a street racer, if you're doing gymkhana out in the street with your rice burner, and you've been caught, you're probably gonna have an issue, okay? Those are really the big ones. What else?
I got a question.
Yeah.
So, and you know, these are all young people. So when they go in for an interview, what can they expect? How should they dress? How should they conduct themselves?
Great question, Ben. If you make it through the written exam, you make it through the background investigation, you'll be invited to an interview with the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners. Any community in Illinois with a population of 5,000 or greater has to have a Board of Fire and Police Commissioners to do the hiring, okay? They actually do the hiring. Excuse me. Chicago's a different animal. I don't even think they do an interview. I think they just do the backgrounds. But if you're called for an interview for Cicero, Berwyn, Des Plaines, wherever, dress professionally, okay? Business attire is definitely the way to go. You want to make points with these commissioners who are all usually old, I mean older than me, okay? You go in, gentlemen in a suit and tie, tie tied, collar buttoned, cleanly shaven, okay? The 3-day growth doesn't cut it on these interviews. Ladies, you go into with something professional, a pantsuit perhaps, demure, your hair done, pulled back. You go in, when you sit down, you'll sit at the head of a long table. And in our case, we have 3 commissioners. They'll sit 2 on one side, 1 on another. They'll be the secretary for the board. All these interviews are recorded, okay? In our case, we bring the command staff in, myself, my 2 deputy chiefs, my investigations commander, and maybe our support services commander. We sit there and we listen. And there's a list of scripted questions that they will ask you, okay? Eye contact. If you're answering a question, if I ask you a question and you don't look at me when you're answering it, what does that tell you? What does it tell me? Something's wrong. Actually, if you watch somebody's eyes, when they're making stuff up, their eyes will go up and to the right. Okay, why is that? they're lying, but they're accessing the creative portion of their brain. And it's a subconscious response, okay? So when people ask you a question, look at them in the eye and answer. And if there's multiple people there, try and make contact with as many as you can to let them know that you're sincere and you really want this job. Why do you want this job? What do you know about the town that you're applying for? Okay? 1994, I applied for the superintendent's job here in Cicero. Why? Because I never saw a police chief's job advertised in the Tribune Wadiats. So I applied. I thought I had no chance in hell. And I got a letter, come on in for an interview with President Maltese. You remember her, she's the one who went to prison? Okay? And I did my homework. In this 94, the internet was in its infancy. I went to the library and I found this book called the Book of Towns. Now you can go on epodunk.com and get the same information. The demographics of the town, the population of the town, when the town was founded, what the neighborhoods are called, what the median family income is, what the educational level is, how many married versus single people are in the town. You get all this information. You need to study it and commit it to memory because it shows that you're committed to working in that community. And I don't care if you take 5 tests or if you test for a consortium that's testing for 5 towns. Study each one of them. You're only going to go in for 1 interview at a time. And know what you're talking about. Okay? Don't come in and say, well, I know Chief Kushner, he's a great guy, but I don't care. I'm not the decision maker. Okay? Yeah, it's nice. People heard about me. Okay, you Googled me, you know what I'm all about. Wonderful. Okay? My 5-year-old grandson does the same thing. You need to study the town. It's a little warm, yeah. You need to know what you're talking about, okay? What are the neighborhoods? What's the biggest problem? What's the biggest crime problem? What's the most recent major crime that's been in the media in that town, okay? What do you know about the department? Because these are all questions they're going to ask you. What do you know about Des Plaines? What do you know about Cicero? What do you know about Berwyn? What do you know about Blue Island? Well, a speck on the map, I don't know. You need to know these things if you're intent on being hired by a town. If they ask you the giant trick question, well, you're on the list for 7 departments. If we hire you here in Des Plaines, are you going to stay or are you going to go to the town nearest your home? What do you think the right answer is? Be honest. If you're going to stay, stay. If you say, I'd rather work in Geneva, Illinois because I live there, okay, fine, no problem. You're not going to be excluded solely for that answer. It's going to weigh in, I'm going to be very honest, it's going to weigh in, but it's not going to be the sole exclusion, okay? When you go in for the interviews, you have to let these people know that you are committed to being part of their department. Because unlike myself and my command staff, none of us live in Des Plaines, the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners do. They do, and they're intent on hiring the best. We are intent on hiring the best. They listen to us, a lot of our input. They make the final decision. Our attrition rate in field training is 25%. 25%. So out of every 4 that we hire, 3 make it. And, you know, let's face it, police work's not for everybody. That's why we got firemen.
That's a good one. I like that one.
Seriously, and you know, put yourself in the position of a working policeman on the street. We work 1-man cars, okay? If you're calling for help at 3 in the morning, do you want the guy that just barely made it through field training? Or made it through field training because he was socially promoted? Or do you want the guy or girl who actually knows what they're doing to come and help you? Because it's a matter of life and death. Your question?
Yeah, do you guys use body cameras? Or?
Yes, we do use body cameras. We got really lucky 5 years ago when the body camera wave was just starting. We were going out to bid for car cameras. We have 45 markers. So we went out to bid for car cameras, and the outfit that was the low qualified bidder was L3. Not a household name, but you know, whatever. Not Panasonic, not Accent. And they said, here, look, we're getting into body cameras. For every car set you buy, we'll give you a body camera. Great, that's $45,000 I don't have to come out of pocket for. But then they structured the deal differently. We bought 15 extra, and they said, okay, well, you're buying 15 extra, you're getting 60 body cameras. Anything else you want? I says, yeah, I want an agreement that every time a camera goes in for maintenance or repair, it's replaced with a new camera, an updated camera and charger. So what's happened over the last almost 5 years is all our cameras have been replaced and upgraded to the latest version. So the car sets, as soon as you pull up, and this was alien to me because we never had cameras in Chicago, you pull up in back of the station, it automatically uploads. If you've tagged a video, the DUI by Moreno, you mark that on your computer. When you pull into the back of the station, it uploads it, it burns 3 copies and labels them for your court file automatically. Yeah, I mean, this is some whiz-bang stuff. The body cameras, you got to download manually, you got to put it in the loading dock and hit the button. But the camera footage is outstanding. And you know what the cameras have proven? It's not the cops that are assholes, it's the citizens. People come in, I want to file a complaint. Yeah, let's look at the body camera footage. Body camera footage? Yeah, let's look at the body camera footage. Is this you here yelling and screaming and calling a cop or everything but a child of God? Yeah, I forgot I ever said anything. It works. It works. What else? Yes?
Do you guys, for officers that want to go back to school, do you guys help with paying?
There is tuition reimbursement.
How much do you guys do, or is it just would depend on the officer?
I don't know what the dollar amount is. I'm trying to think. I want to say it might be $2,000 a semester, but I might be wrong. I'm not sure. It's been a long time since I needed tuition reimbursement. I just know it's still in the contract and it's still in the budget. So
I think Chicago's 75 now.
is it?
Used to be more,
Yeah, ours might be higher because thank God for Chicago. That's how I got my degrees.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good thing. And you'd be surprised how many people don't take advantage of it. I've got 2 deputy chiefs, and I tell them one's got an associate and one's got a bachelor's, and I say, you guys need to go back to school. Nah, I really don't want to. I said, well, there's 2 reasons for you to go back to school. One's got a son at UCLA in the accounting program. I says, if you go back to school and you file the FAFSA form, you will get more financial aid for your son's tuition because you're in school as well. Okay. The other one has got a son that's a senior at Wheaton Warrenville South and a daughter that's a freshman. And I says, Ben's going to be looking at college. He may not get a full ride for football. You need to go back for a master's degree. You'll get more financial aid. Yeah, okay. Okay, whatever. So I don't know nothing, What else? Yes, sir.
I was just wondering, what's another way to stand out in an interview besides eye contact? Because I know you probably get a lot of cliche things that people say, like, I want to make a difference. Besides that, is there anything else that we can do to stand out?
That's an excellent question. I want to make a difference. I want to help people. I want to serve the community. We hear them all, okay? And they're all valid. And I don't doubt the sincerity of the individuals that say this. But if you want to make a striking appearance when you walk in, what color denotes truth or truthfulness?
White.
Blue. You ever see guys going on the news going to federal court? Okay, going in the Dirksen building, you ever see what color their suits are? Blue. Everybody's got a federal court suit. So you want to stand out, blue suit, powder blue or white shirt or blouse, and you want to be confident, you want to show your confidence, wear a yellow tie. It's all subliminal. This is how you stand out. If you've got an interview around the 4th of July, if you can find a tie or a scarf with red, white, and blue pin dots, and I mean pin dots, not polka dots, pin dots, you wear that, okay? That's how you stand out. If you're a veteran,
We got a couple back here. A couple
Okay.
of former Marines back there.
there's no such thing as a former Marine. They're in inactive ready reserve.
Yeah.
But thank you for your service. You're going to hear that a lot, I hope. You should, okay? But don't be afraid to bring that up as well. One of the questions was asked one of our officers who's now on our SWAT team. What's the most stressful thing you've ever done? And you'd be amazed. What's the most stressful thing you've ever done?
Give birth.
Okay, yeah, okay, you got it. You win. You win. Okay, what's the most stressful thing you've ever done?
I guess go to school and work.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's horrible. Okay. We asked young Jimmy Armstrong, what's the most stressful thing you've ever done? He goes, well, we invaded 2 foreign countries. That was pretty stressful. Okay, yeah, you win. Yeah, next to giving birth, I'm down with that.
See, Omar, were you deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan?
Iraq when I was 19.
Wow, okay. Yeah, my nephew was over there, and he was a sergeant. He was a platoon sergeant. He was on a patrol, and he stepped on a defective IED that did not go off. And he found out that the same day he stepped on that bad IED, his brother died of a heroin overdose in Crystal Lake, Illinois. Okay, now the guy that stepped on the IED is in the helicopter unit at San Diego County Sheriff's Police. So, there's a lot of opportunities out there.
And he's in the process for Chicago.
Really?
Yeah.
Run like hell. It's not, and I'll tell you, it's not the same job it was. And the jobs change, no matter what department you're in, things change. If you can get out of Chicago, God love you, that's great. But you're gonna go through the academy, and I'm gonna tell you honestly, from the perspective of someone who went through there and taught there a couple times and supervised, the academy staff has to tell you policy. They have to. Jim Clemens and I were kind of different. We used to tell you policy and then tell you the truth at the same time. You're not going to get that from everybody. Some people are afraid they're going to lose their spot, they're going to get in trouble, whatever, okay? If you're not afraid of working the street, it doesn't matter, okay? But listen to what they have to say. You're going to hear a lot of good stuff and you're going to hear a lot of bad stuff. It's like going to Sears and filling up a toolbox. When you find a tool that works, you put it in your mental toolbox and you hang on to it, okay? And you find one that's a piece of crap, you throw it away and ignore it. And you're going to find that with field training officers as well. They're going to give you some really good advice or give you some really crappy advice. Some of the field training officers are just barely off probation. So, and depending on what district they're in, they may be on the job 3 years, they may have 1 year of experience 3 times over, or they may have 3 years experience. So you have to be alert, pay attention. You survived in being in the sandbox, you'll survive in Chicago. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
What's the process like if you start off a regular officer and you want to move up to the detective unit, at least because you guys said that you have your own?
Mm-hmm.
Is it like a certain amount of years that you have to be sort of like a regular cop to move up, or?
Well, yeah, it is. Some departments test, some departments have a 90-day rotation in to see how people fit in. Berwyn had a 90-day rotation period where we take somebody who we thought had a lot of promise, we'd give them a 90-day rotation to the Bureau. In our department, we look for people, we try and get them to progress through patrol, tactical, and then if there's, maybe school resource officer, and then see if we can get them into the Bureau, if there's an opening in the Bureau, okay? It's not a matter of, and what we get a lot of, and we get it on the backgrounds, and we get it sometimes in the interviews, what do you want to do? I want to be a homicide detective. Okay? We had 1 homicide in 2018. You'd be like the Maytag repairman. You'd be the loneliest man in Des Plaines, or woman. 1 murder. Okay? So our detectives handle everything. We just took hit and run accidents away from them. We gave it to our community action team. But they handle everything. They handle check frauds. They handle internet frauds. We had a castration case that was, yeah. Yeah, you talk about an education for a bunch of people. They wrote 89 electronic search warrants. 89 search warrants for electronic media. And we ended up working with the FBI, getting passenger manifests from Delta Airlines, tracking the guy down to Tallahassee, Florida, and serving warrants at Tallahassee and Atlanta simultaneously. Yeah. It was an unrequited love thing. Yeah. Or baby mama drama. So what else? There's no set timeline. I can't say you're going to be hired today and within 5 years you'll be a detective. That's entirely up to you. And how. What else? Question? Or are you just stretching your hand? Or Oh, okay. You can go back to sleep, it's
He's
okay.
usually got something to say, I'm surprised.
Yes, sir.
How would you describe your relationship with the community, taking in consideration that you guys have only had one homicide?
Our relationship is really, really good. We have a divisive influence in town. We have a newspaper that I always say the only reason it exists is to line the bottom of people's bird cages. Because if he finds anything good to say about the police department, he won't print it. And I don't understand why. I really don't, okay? So any dirt that he thinks he can dig up and throw out, he throws out, and the community's like, oh, we don't even read that stuff, okay? Community's very supportive. We do National Night Out every year. We go out, we have ward meetings and community, ward meetings more than anything else. We have 8 wards, so the aldermen will have a ward meeting, they'll say, Chief, would you come to the ward meeting? And they give me the floor for as long as I need it. And overall, the relationship with the community is really, really good. It really is. We had some issues in the Hispanic community probably 2 years ago with all the stuff with ICE kicked up. And we've gone out of our way to reassure everybody, we're not enforcing immigration status. I really don't care. I'm enforcing laws. If you break the law, you're going to be arrested. I don't care how you got here. I really don't. I'm worried about, did you commit an armed robbery? Did you steal a car? Did you shoot somebody? Did you stab somebody? Did you castrate somebody? Okay? That's what I'm concerned about. And once we got that fact out there, and we've got a couple of really, really good, vibrant young officers, including one of our canine handlers, who's made great inroads with that segment of the community, and it's great. It really is. We go out, we do demos with our dogs. We have 2 dogs. So far this year, I think they've seized almost $90 million in cash. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
Sure is.
So,
How many Hispanics you got about?
on the department,
No, well, both.
the city's about 30%. Yeah. Give or take. We have Maine West High School, which has a daily population of about 3,500 people, okay? And it draws from the unincorporated areas also, so the Hispanic population at Maine West is probably closer to 42%, because we take the unincorporated area in just east of us, between us and Glenview and Park Ridge. On the department, I think we have 12 out of 100, so a little over 10%. Excuse me, but I've got Spanish speakers, I've got Polish speakers, I've got Arab speakers, I've got Farsi speakers. So we're covered. I mean, we're covered. We can cover any lingual crisis we have. We're good to go. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
I can have 2 questions. One, what are the ratio of male to female officers? Do you have a pretty even amount of each, or?
No.
Lot
Honestly, no, we don't. We just had a female officer with Bridget had 25 years or 27 years. She just retired. I have Katie, Tara, Kathy's off on maternity, Jennifer, going through the list, my female detective, Jen just retired, Joan Penzi. I've got 5 out of 100.
Really?
I mean, actually 6. We got 1 in the academy.
And then the second question was, I was just curious, what are the rankings that you have for patrol, like sergeant,
Police officer, sergeant, police officer.
how many you have of each? I was just
Okay,
curious.
there's 11 sergeants, I can tell you that.
Oh, okay.
That I know. Okay. Wow, I didn't know it was gonna be a test.
She's
Wow.
excited.
Yeah.
Just curious.
No, there's 11 sergeants, and that's, all the positions are budgeted. So we're getting ready to go into budget hearings next week. And we go in, it's supposed to be with the finance committee of the city council, which is 3 people, but the entire council will sit there for the budget meeting. And we pretty much lay our soul out in front of them and say, this is what we need, this is what we want, and it's a zero-based budget. So every year we don't ask for any increase at all. If we have a project that we need to get done, we have equipment that we need to buy, if the city manager at the preliminary meeting says, I can't approve this, no problem, boss, that's fine. We write it in the budget to use asset forfeiture money. And they pretty much can't say no to that, because under the law, both state and federal, as the chief law enforcement officer, I'm responsible and accountable for the asset forfeiture funding. So that's how we use that. We have 5 commanders, support services, investigations, and then the 3 shifts, okay? Midnight shift stays and midnights, days and afternoons rotate every month. And then we have 2 deputy chiefs, deputy chief of administration, deputy chief of operations. We have an administrative manager who's a civilian. And Tim is worth his weight and my weight in gold because Tim takes care of all the technology. He takes care of the cars, he takes care of the body cameras.
He's a civilian?
He's a civilian, yeah.
And what's his title?
Administrative manager. And then there's 1 chief. And we just got an executive assistant, thank God. The last one I had was retired for the last 30 years, but she didn't know it. She did nothing. Absolutely. What else? Yes, sir.
Does your credit history have anything to do with your background?
We do look at your credit history. We do look at it.
Good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. We're not going to bounce you because you have a 600 credit score,
Yeah.
but we're going to look and see how. We do get a report. I think we use Experian or TransUnion. How many open accounts you have, what your balance is. If we hired people that had no debt, it's unrealistic. We wouldn't have anybody, okay? Because you have student loan debt, you have a car debt, you might have a credit card debt, you know, house payment,
Yeah.
you know, you got medical bills. If you got kids, you may have medical bills. We look at all that. What we look at, what we're really looking for when we do a credit history on you, okay, you're making $28,000 a year working wherever, but you're driving a brand new Corvette. There's a problem. There's a problem because you're getting income from somewhere else to pay for this Corvette. I had a copper when I was in 3, Grand Crossing, as a TAC lieutenant. This guy wanted to go, I came in as a TAC lieutenant, he transferred out as fast as he could. He ran like a scalded dog. He went to narcotics. So the lieutenant from narcotics calls me, and he goes, hey, you remember so-and-so? And I said, yeah. He says, you know, we do a background on a guy's coming in narcotics. And I says, yeah, I know, Pete. He says, this guy has almost $250,000 in debt, and he rents an apartment. But he's current on his car note on a brand new Dodge Viper. Really? How'd that happen? Then it turns out that he tried to enlist a dope dealer who was an informant for DEA to rip off another dope dealer because he needed cash. He's a guest at the fence. So yeah, we do look at your credit history, but we're not going to say, no, 500 credit score? No, we don't want you. We'll take it. Okay. What else?
Usually have a lot of what-if questions, or?
There's got to be, now, this is going to be like when you were a recruit, we're going to get ready to walk out the door and there's going to be 12 questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
There's got to be something. Well, when was the last time you had a, number one, a grizzled old veteran Chicago cop, number two, a police chief come in and say, I'll take any question you got?
Yeah, take the opportunity.
Who's the most common call you get in your department?
We have 2 that are incredibly common. We get domestic battery calls, and we get suicide calls. It's got to be in the water. That's the only thing I can figure, you know. We average probably 3 attempt suicides a week, maybe 4. That's a lot. That's a lot, okay? The overdoses dropped off dramatically like 2 years ago. We started a Narcan program 3 years ago. The first year, I think we had 27 saves. 2 of them were multiple saves. We saved the guy 3 or 4 times, okay? It's an incredible drug. But, you know, my thought is, well, there are people with diabetes that are paying $500 for their insulin, but we're saving this addict's life for nothing. So you still got to save a life. That's part of the job. The other big call we get is trespassers at the casino. You know, we have Rivers Casino in town. We average 1 call every 8 hours at the casino. That's not a lot. 3 calls a day is nothing. And it's trespassers. Well, if you go in, and this goes back into substance abuse, if you go into Gamblers Anonymous, I got a gambling problem. I can't live. I'm over my head in debt. I'm going to lose my house. My family's going to leave me. I gotta clean up, I gotta straighten this out, okay? They make you sign a self-exclusion letter, and they send it to the State of Illinois Gaming Board. They also send it to Indiana and Michigan. And it says, I am in Gambling Anonymous, please exclude me from this casino. Well, they don't check your IDs when you're walking in unless you look like you're under 21. He locked himself out? And they don't check your IDs to see if you're on the self-exclusion list when you walk in the casino. What happens is if you sit down at a slot machine and you hit the $5,000 jackpot, or you hit a $100 jackpot, you don't get the money out, you get a ticket, okay? And you take the ticket over to the cashier, and you say, here you go, and they say, can we see your ID? And you give them a driver's license. Hey, well, Mr. Kushner, congratulations on your winnings, $5,000, that's great. Here's a list of the charities that you can donate your winnings to, and by the way, the Des Plaines police are coming to write you a ticket for trespass. So we write them a ticket for $750 for criminal trespass to land under the city ordinance. We escort them off the property, and the money they won, or thought they won, gets donated to a charity. That's one of our other big calls. Okay?
And this is a community of how many people?
58,000. About 150, 160,000 during the day.
A lot of these calls are outsiders.
No, well, the trespassing calls are almost always outsiders.
Okay.
Almost always outsiders. The rest of the calls are residential. Summer of 2018, we had just a rash of burglaries to motor vehicles in the overnights. And we identified a couple of gangs, and we worked with the FBI. There was one group from Harvey that was hitting from Dyer, Indiana, all the way up to Kenosha, Wisconsin. Because people were not locking their cars. And the really stupid ones were leaving the key fobs in the cars. Okay? Then there was another group out of Inglewood that was operating from Northbrook to Harvey. Same thing. Just incredible. One night we had a 90-mile chase. 90 miles on the highway. We kind of tagged along once they tried to ram a state police car. The state police took over the chase, which was fine. It started in Des Plaines, went all the way out west of Oak Brook, doubled back in, and ended up at the Eisenhower and Racine in Chicago. The 16-year-old was driving because he could read, but he thought he was in Indiana. Didn't read very well. And the only reason we had the chase is because they shot at a woman in Arlington Heights who went out because she heard somebody in her car. They fired a shot at her from a gun that they got out of a car in Barrington. So, you know, police work is 59 minutes of boredom punctuated by a minute of sheer terror at any given time. Pretty close description. What else? Yes, sir.
Do certain misdemeanors like exclude you from being a police officer?
Domestic violence, battery. We look at the totality of the circumstances. You know, did you slap your little brother and you get locked up? Did you slap your girlfriend? That's a whole different ballgame. Okay. Generally, anything involving moral turpitude will get you launched right away. If it's anything to deal with morality, forget it, because there tends to be, the leopards don't change their spots. But other than that, you're pretty much good to go, you know. And you gotta realize, when we hire somebody, they're on probation for 18 months. You know, if you can't keep your stuff together for 18 months, you got a bigger problem. You know, it's real simple. You follow the rules, you do things the way you're told to do them. If you disagree with an order being given to you by a supervisor, you still do it anyway. You don't argue with them. Okay? We pay people a lot of money to do this job. I mean, comparatively.
I was gonna address that later.
Supervisory.
Yeah, about respect.
Oh, yeah. You know, if
You gotta give it, you gotta learn it to earn it.
Yeah. You know, people, you know, how many times you heard somebody on the street say, he disrespected me? Well, have you earned that respect? You know, and we worked in a very large organization, and there were people, individuals, that we encountered that you could not respect that person, but you had to respect their position. You had to respect their rank, okay? It's the same in the military, you know? You may have a captain that's a complete and total moron, like just came out of the movie Stripes, but you still gotta respect those bars that he's wearing, or she's wearing. You have to respect the position. So, what else? Oh,
What's your salary?
what's my salary? I just got a pay raise because they just gave me the fire department too. We start about $72,000 a year, and you get a bump after 6 months, and you get another bump after your first year. It's $1,600, almost $1,600 a year uniform allowance. So,
That's better than Chicago, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
What's the worst thing you've seen?
The worst thing I've seen? Ooh. How many have kids in here?
And displaying.
Well, displaying is a whole different ballgame. Like I said, we used to get the jobs on the radio, you know, make the investigation, and they give you the address. So we went to South Shore Hospital one night on midnights. And South Shore Hospital is probably a quarter block square, 4 stories high, and it's one of the old community hospitals in Chicago. We walked in, and you walked down this ramp into the ER, and sitting at the desk is one of our detectives working afternoons. He's working security there. I said, Jimmy, what do you got? What do we got? He goes, oh, it's a child abuse. I says, yeah, he's family related. I call youth division, it's not ours. We turn around and walk out, the kid's dead. Okay? So we walk in, and this is 1985. Because my oldest guy was just about 2. So he was about 6 months younger than this young girl. We walk into the exam room, and you ever hear the term cadaveric spasm? Oh, you further. Cadaveric spasm is an almost instantaneous form of rigor mortis where the entire body stiffens. Rigor mortis is caused by what? Buildup of lactic acid in the muscles, starts in the small muscle groups, progresses through the body, stays for about 12 to 18 hours, and then reverses in the same pattern in which it came. Cadaveric spasm comes on like that, okay? We walk into this exam room, here is this 2.5-year-old girl, deader than dead. You could take her foot and turn her entire body. Her entire body would rotate when you moved her foot. She had bruising over every part of her body, including her eyelids, her earlobes, and her vaginal lips, and the soles of her feet. Who did this heinous thing to this child? Well, Mom and Dad were together for about 5 years. Dad was trying to do the right thing. He was a freelance painter. He was down in Hyde Park at one of these great big apartment buildings painting the lobby. And his common-law wife decided to bring Jasmine James, who's the 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old, and her little sister, whose name I've forgotten, down to have lunch with Dad. Very commendable, very uncommon. And while they're down there, Jazzy is being a typical 2-year-old. And she picks up something off a tabletop and drops it and shatters the glass tabletop. Dad's a freelancer. He worked the whole day to pay for that tabletop. So the money they were counting on for bills from this job, he doesn't have. It's gone. So but he still had to finish the job. So he comes home, he's tired, he's hungry, he's upset, understandably. They have dinner. His wife says, Jimmy, I'm going to get my hair done, put the girls to bed. Puts the baby down, no problem. Jimmy says, Jasmine, come on. Jazzy, put on your pajamas. No. If you got a 2-year-old, you know that that's probably the first word they learn. No. No. So he starts helping her put her pajamas on. And she was potty trained. Okay? So this is not a family that has ignored their children. They've actually been trying to do the right thing with their kids. And he gets her pants down, he goes to put her pajama bottoms on, he gives her a crack on the butt, and she urinates on herself. And on him. And he lost it. And he grabbed her by the right arm, he held her up, and he beat her with his belt. And then he beat her with an extension cord because his belt broke. And then, because he was in such a blind fury, he beat her with a coat hanger. He beat her so hard that her right shoulder had separated and her arm had broken in 2 places. Mom comes home, he says, I think Jazzy's sick. Jazzy was as stiff as his podium. So they dress her, they run outside, leave the baby in the house, they flag down a passing squad car. Remember Eddie Watkins? Eddie worked in traffic for a while. Eddie Watkins was not the brightest bulb in the string. They're carrying this kid like they're carrying a 2x4. Says, our baby's sick, I'll drive you to the hospital. Rushes him to South Shore Hospital, we come in. This child was beaten. You wouldn't beat a dog like this, the way this girl was beaten. Okay? We go to trial. And Dr. Stein, God rest his soul, was still the medical examiner in Chicago, was still alive. Stein came in, and jury trials generally are big dog and pony shows, because you put in all the big graphic evidence for the jury. They did it for a bench trial. They brought in photographs, poster size, of her injuries. And then the next photograph was the bruising incised. In other words, they cut across the bruising. They showed that the bruising went to the bone. The abdominal bruising went into the internal organs. Okay? The judge was Jack Mannion. Jack Mannion had been a youth officer in Chicago, had been a sergeant in the youth division before he retired, became a judge. The defense attorney was a guy named Julius Eccles. If you've ever seen Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, that animated special every Christmas time, the snowman with the Van Dyke, that's what Julius Eccles looked like, okay? And when Jack Mannion sentenced Jimmy Lee Ty, he sentenced him to death, and he brought in all his personal experiences. He says, I'm allowed to do this at this point in the proceedings. Well, they appealed the death sentence because it's automatic appeal, and it was reversed. It was not reversed, it was remanded for resentencing. Jimmy Lee Ty is still doing natural life, and he will do natural life. He will not get out of the penitentiary alive. The only one I ever had worse than that was the woman who was suffering extreme postpartum depression and believed that her baby had been possessed by a devil. And they lived in this beautiful 3-bedroom flat on the east side. Her husband was an attorney, and he says, are you going to be okay today? I'll be fine, I'll take care of the baby, I'll be good. He came home from work and there was a stench in the apartment. And she's squatting on the floor with a samurai sword saying, I got the devil out of the baby. She had literally hacked the baby to death and left it in a pile on the crib mattress. So, yeah, it is. Craziest thing is we keep going back for more. We keep going back after these cases and we keep locking people up. Okay? So, next.
Anything else, Phil? End on a good note?
And on a good note, I've had a great 43 years. It's been a wonderful career. I never, ever thought I would end up as a police chief, and I got into the idea of becoming a police chief because no matter what job you work at, you've got a boss that says something and you wonder, geez, there's got to be a better way to do it than that. Are they nuts? You start thinking, I can come up with a better way of doing it. And that's pretty much what I did. I got very lucky in Berwyn. I had a free hand in Berwyn. I was able to make a whole lot of changes and had a really great department, and I had a really great time with the community. Lakemore was 14 square miles with 5,000 people. I had more animals than people. That was a great time. It was a whole different experience. Des Plaines is good. The most important thing that you can take away from any of this is the fact that we get an opportunity to impact young lives and maybe steer you to a fulfilling and purposeful career, you know. And if you hear stories like the ones I just related, and those are the things that turn you off, and you say, I can't deal with that, then it's time to look for something else. So, any questions, any problems, any complaints, give me a call anytime, okay?
So if they're interested, they can apply online to display.
We'll probably, I don't know how far down we are, but we advertise through the blueline.com. So check the blueline.com. There's always somebody looking for testing, and we probably won't test for another year. Yeah, sure.
Rahil, you gotta give them one of your cards.
Let me